Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists Podcast with me, Gavin Cook.
And me, Jackson White.
And today's guest is a young lady who has been doing Taekwondo for 33 years. She's been a TAGB squad member for 17 years and currently holds 6 world titles. And lucky enough for me, she was one of my original team friends when we used to train with Jackson White Senior. So today's guest is Nicky Line. Hello, Nicky.
Hello, you two. How are you?
We're really good, thank you. Thanks for coming on the show today.
No problem.
Brilliant. So I'm going to get Jackie to kick off with the first question. Shall I, Jackie?
Hey, Nicky, yeah, please. It's great to have you on the show. Thanks for agreeing to come on.
Well, you did kind of coerce me into it, but go on.
I was just calling in some old favours, really, from when I used to look after you back in the day. So, and talking of being back in the day, it's it's really interesting. You know, we all, myself, you and Gavin, we all grew up in the same Taekwondo environment. But can you give us a bit of an insight into your early life, a bit of your childhood, and what got you into martial arts?
Yeah, so I grew up in Daventry with mum and dad and my brother and sister. Went to school there, and when I was about 10, my mum decided that my brother needed a bit more confidence. So she took him along to this local martial arts class, and I went along with them. Didn't know anything about Taekwondo, never heard of it before, and to be honest, back then neither had many people, because you had to kind of say, oh, it's a bit like karate but not, sort of thing. Yeah. So we went along to the class. My brother didn't like it, I did basically, so that's where it all started from, and here we are today still doing it.
Okay, I'd never have guessed, 'cause all those years that we trained when we were younger, you never smiled once and you hardly ever talked. So we would have guessed that you did like it.
No, but she could drop the axe kick.
Yeah, true, yeah. You didn't need to speak.
You didn't need to speak, did you, Nicky? You let your feet do the talking.
No, exactly, no. And you never smiled either, and Jackson never smiled, so,
Well, we're taking it seriously, but taking it seriously back in them days, yeah.
I was too scared to smile, Nicky, to be quite honest.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So you came to the club when you was 10. I mean, obviously I was training at the time. I think I was a green belt or a green stripe when you started. Jackie would have probably been about a red belt, something like that. Yeah. What was it an instant attraction to the club, do you think, or was it, did it take you a bit of a time to get used to the environment?
Yeah, I think initially when you're just doing your 4-directional over and over again, and you're not doing so much of the more exciting stuff. At first I thought, is this for me? But I just looked at what you guys were doing as the higher grades, really, and thought, yeah, I want to do that. And that looks exciting, so I'm going to stick with this. And so, yeah, I think it was just by seeing what you were all doing in the class as well that sort of made me think, yeah, that looks good, that looks fun, I'm going to do this.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we had Jackson Senior on the podcast previous, and I was sort of saying, back in the olden days, there was no fun and games in the classes. It was all quite brutal, wasn't it? It was just a mixture of stretching and repetition. Obviously, I know you've run your own club for a number of years, and obviously you've had children and things in your class, and obviously these days the training is very different, isn't it? Oh,
big time, yeah. I mean, like you say, when we first started, you go along, you do your warm-up, you do your stretching, you do your line work, and it wasn't until you were kind of a higher grade that you got to do any sort of sparring. Obviously, you do your set sparring, but yeah, it was all very, very laid out, and we had a laugh afterwards when we all started getting to know each other, but not in the class, and that was all very serious, and you didn't dare mess about, to be honest, because otherwise you'd incur the wrath of Jackson Senior.
Yeah, on those sweaty Sunday morning sparring sessions that we used to do.
So when did you enter your first competition, Nicky?
I think I was probably about a green belt, and I think it was Well, one of the first I remember was one that your dad organised at the leisure centre, and it was a Midlands Championship. But I mean, when you think to our Midlands Championships now, how many people go to it? This was nowhere near that, and so that was one of my first competitions. I think I got a trophy, but because there weren't that many people in there, and I think probably because it went on height. Obviously, I was one of the taller ones, so there was probably no one in my category. But you know, it moved on from there, luckily, and has got a bit more popular since then. So I don't have that issue anymore.
I remember that competition well, actually. I think it was only about 2 squares, wasn't it, in the Daventry Leisure Centre. It was good though. Good days.
That's the one, yeah. Oh no, it was good, you know, and it got me into kind of a competition type atmosphere, even though it was on a very, very much smaller scale than what we have now. But it was a start, and sort of gave me the bug to think, yeah, I enjoy this, I'm going to carry on.
I think it's good to start in these sort of smaller regional type competitions, isn't it, though, as well? Just to sort of dip your toe in the water before you start maybe looking at going straight into the national championship.
Yeah, I mean, we always say to our students, if you want to go into competition, start with something like the Midlands Champs, because, like I say, although it's bigger than it used to be, it's still not as big as your national competitions, and so it is a good opportunity to get in there and see what it's all about and have a go.
So how old were you when you achieved your black belt, Nicky?
Well, I started when I was 10, but I didn't get my black belt until I was 16. So it took me a few years to get there. But the thing was, when I was younger, I was so much into other stuff as well. Like, you know, every night of the week I was doing some sort of activity. So didn't really sort of commit to one thing. And I guess that's why it took me a little bit longer as well, just to get there. But yeah, I mean, obviously when I did get it, I was over the moon. Obviously,
you've been fighting now, and Gavin's mentioned at the very beginning, you've won, the 6th last female heavyweight TI championships, world championships. What encouraged you to go into the TAGB squad? What was your motivation for that?
I started, once I got, when I was about 14, I think my first real trophy was like getting a 3rd in the British champs, and and that was a really big achievement for me, because until then I wasn't really that successful at competitions. I'd go in and have a go, but more often than not I'd come away with nothing, and get a 1st or a 2nd round fighting, and that was it. And then when I got to 16, so I passed my black belt, and one of the first competitions I went into was going from girls red belt into ladies black belt heavyweight, and I was fighting people like Ros Simpson, Jenny Grant, and the strength of those ladies. And so your dad persuaded me that I needed to go squad training as well. So I started going squad training. Obviously it gave me the opportunity to spar against the current squad back then, and so that's where it really started, just because your dad told me to go, and I wasn't going to say no to him because I was scared of him.
Chicken.
Still am.
So
I mean that's where it started, and that's been it really. I mean, obviously I've had times where I've not been able to commit to it because of work and the shifts that I've done, and obviously being off having my daughter as well. Generally I've stuck with it, which until the last couple of years really.
Okay, so how did you find that transition then from moving from a junior into the adults at the age of 16? What did you have to do differently in terms of your training to adapt?
It was just such a big step. I didn't realise how much different it would be. I mean, obviously now we've got the cadets, which I think is a brilliant idea, because it's a bit of a stepping stone.
It's a transition, isn't it? A really good transition.
Yeah, but like I say, it was a big learning curve going in against ladies like Ros and Jenny, and their side kicks were so hard, and I was very naive as to how it was going to be. But I think just plugging away, going to squad training over at Dave Oliver's with all the guys over there, that obviously helped, because I was sparring men all the time, and so just gradually sort of got myself up there really.
Okay, and how long did it take before you started becoming successful as an adult woman?
For a lot of years it was kind of me against Debbie Hill. I mean, for years and years it was just me and her in the final, and she was obviously on the squad, and she won most of the time, and then it sort of got closer and closer and closer until luckily I won. But yeah, it took a while to sort of get up there, and it never came sort of easily to me. I always had to work hard for it.
Working hard on the flexibility and having them tough sparring sessions with Jackson Senior, it all helps, presumably.
Oh God, yeah. Looking back now, I realised how lucky we all were to be training. I mean, let's face it, Daventry, as you both know, is not the biggest of towns, and back then there weren't that many clubs around because TAGB wasn't that old, and so for us to have a club in Daventry and have an instructor like Jackson, I really, really appreciate those opportunities that I had now, because, and then obviously going over to Dave Oliver's club, because he was over at Warwick, so I started training there every Sunday, and it was proper old school training. It was always hard work. You knew that when you went, you were going to come out of there sweating. But that's what I like, and that, to me, that's a decent session when you can go along. You're going to work hard, but you come out there with a sense of accomplishment that you have achieved something and you have worked hard.
Absolutely. I mean, we were saying before, like I say, we realise now how lucky we were, but at the time you don't really appreciate it, do you? You just think, okay, this is what it is, and you get on with it. But looking back, we were so lucky to have him as an instructor. I mean, he used to put us through our paces,
and having all the other instructors around us as well. So, like I say, Dave Oliver's club was just up the road.
Yeah.
And having Jackson, who was still on the team at that point and still competing, and being able to sort of take some of his knowledge away. I mean, now you could go to probably any town in the UK and find a club, but yeah, back then when there wasn't so many going, it was, you look back and you think that we were so lucky to have all of that, and it makes you appreciate that we did have
what
it.
You had. Absolutely. I mean, it's questionable now, though, isn't it? If you was to go around the UK and go into clubs, how many of them would be as dedicated to and have that opportunity for sparring? I know certainly a lot of clubs these days, they're not all. There's not a lot of clubs that are big sparring clubs these days, are there?
No, there's not. And I think because of the people we did train with, and the fact that obviously Dave was the coach, Jackson was still training and competing, that sparring was a big thing for them, and so it became a big thing for us, really. I know that there's clubs around now that don't really do that much of it, and we still do a sparring session every Friday. So, whereas we started going to Dave's Friday night sparring club back at Warwick, we've kind of tried to carry that on, because we realised how much it gave to us and how much we enjoyed it as well. And you can have a crappy week at work and feel really drained. You go along to a Friday night session and think, there's no way I'm going to get through this. And then an hour later, you're walking out thinking, that was a really good session. So, sparring's still very much a big part of it for us.
Okay. Can you talk us through your current job, Nicky, and let us know really whether you feel martial arts has aided you in achieving what you've achieved in your current role, and how it supported you?
So I'm a police officer in Northamptonshire Police. Done that for 16 years, and all of that time I've been on response, so responding to emergency calls, which could be anything from RTCs to assaults, domestic, all the sort of main stuff, really. I think in terms of how Taekwondo has helped me, it's definitely helped me in terms of the conflict situations, and I like to think it's given me the confidence to go into those situations and think to myself, I'm not obviously happy to be here, but I think if anything happens, then hopefully I've got the skills to be able to assist me or assist my colleagues, and I think you don't appreciate that, because we've been brought up doing sparring and in those sorts of situations for so many years. It's kind of a natural thing for us to have someone in front of us wanting to hit us.
Of course.
Obviously, it's a bit different at work when they want to, but when you've got colleagues who have never had any sort of conflict situation, and you forget that it's a really big thing for them. So it's definitely helped me from that side of things.
I've heard that when a call normally comes in, if it's a scuffle in Daventry, it's just a case of, we'll just send Nicky.
Comments have been made to that effect, and I always say, no, you can go first, you need the experience.
You're so kind.
Oh I'll just come along afterwards and make sure you're all okay.
Oh dear. So just stepping back slightly then. So what I'd really like to delve into is how you dealt, again, really going back for those days where you weren't really winning and you were constantly losing to one or the same competitor. How did you deal with those failures, Nicky?
Anyway, I won't lie. I mean, it was difficult, and it sort of got to the point where at one point I'd go to competitions, and Bill, who's my husband, as you well know, and who I met at Taekwondo, he sort of was my coach as well, and he'd say to me, you know, this is what you got to do, and it was difficult because it was easy to go along thinking, well, I've been beaten all these times, I'm just going to get beaten again. How do I ever get round this person? Well, generally Debbie it was, because it was always me and her in the final, and we had some brilliant fights over the years. But I kept plugging away, kept working hard, kept going to squad training, kept training with Dave as well. And I think being able to spar as many different people as possible really helped. I mean, I was lucky in terms of having the Warwick Club, because you got all the sort of older squad members. You got people like Stevie Merricks, Mick Keogh, Bob Howe, Ant Brennan, Sean Rogers, Roger Lawrence. You know, they all went to the Friday night session. I think that helped me being able to spar so many different people there. And also, because I've always been tall, it helped me spar the men who were my size. And so I think it was just a case of keep plugging away and keep working hard, and basically I eventually got there.
Okay, so you got into the squad. Can you talk us through your first trip away?
Yeah, I was after I'd started going squad training. One of the first trips or main trips I went on was to Miami, and we went over there. I think it was 2002. And although Debbie was still the main heavyweight fighter, I went over there and kind of on the fringes, and that was just amazing, because it was the first time I'd ever been sort of in that sort of team type environment, really. And we did have a good strong team that went over, so that was amazing. I mean, it was a brilliant trip. Obviously, we were training on the beach before the competition, and managed to sort of stay there afterwards and have a few days just to be tourists. But yeah, that was one of the first times I went away. And then it was kind of, I was on and off the squad for a bit due to, like I say, work commitments. I couldn't make it to squad every week. And I had my daughter as well. But I've definitely had some really good opportunities when I have been on the squad. You know, I've travelled to some countries and some places that I'd never have expected to, and we've had some really good times actually.
I mean, you certainly had a good fighting career, Nicky. I mean, I know obviously I had sort of 10, 12 years out of Taekwondo, and when I came back, and I remember bumping into you in town, and I was shocked. He was like, "Yeah, no, I'm still training. I'm still in the squad, and I'm still winning." I'm like, "Well, geez, you know what I say. You've had a really."
Yeah, I never learnt my lesson, did I? I just carried on.
No. What would you over your career? Is there any real sort of memorable fight that sticks out, or a real high point? And don't say doing 3-step sparring with me.
Oh well, obviously that is up there, Gav. Because 3-step sparring and free sparring with you has always been a treat.
It's not often you can land that many head kicks on one person, is it?
Soak it up with my afro.
No, I mean I've had some brilliant highlights. I think probably winning the world champs after the year after I had my daughter Amelia. That's got to be up there definitely, because you know it just shows that you can be out of it for a while and come back and have success, and in my sort of case even more success than I'd ever had before, because I won the world champs. I think one of the other highlights was in 2012 I got the award for the TAGB International Fighter.
Brilliant.
And that was a really big honour for me, because I didn't expect it at all. You know, there were some great people on the team, and for the committee to have picked me, that really meant a lot to me. So that was definitely a highlight. And things like, you know, some of the team events we've been to, the BTC champs we went to once, and we won all the fights there, and then it went to a decider on the breaking, and they made me do it, which luckily was successful, so we won the BTC champs. So there's been some fantastic highlights, definitely.
And in terms of highlights, which would you say is your best overseas trip? I know we've done a few. One of that sticks out in my mind is Texas, when we went over to Houston.
Definitely, yeah.
What's been your favourite trip?
I think Miami was probably my favourite because, as I said, it was the first time I'd ever been sort of that far away. And having been to places like Poland back in the 1990s, where we were in an old sports hall with holes in the roof and security guards on the door with batons and things. It kind of made you appreciate going to somewhere like Miami. And then we went to Dallas for one, didn't we? Went to Memphis, been to Tampa as well. So those ones have definitely been the memorable ones, I think, for enjoyment purposes, and to go and experience these places. And the Americans have been so friendly and sort of pleased to have us and gone out of their way to really look after us. So they've been the good ones. But as I say, trips like Poland were good in their own way, but memorable for other reasons, like the state of the sports hall and stuff, and the nice wooden trophies that we got at the end of it.
Well, at least you got trophies. I've been to some of these places where you don't actually get a medal.
I'm not complaining at all, yeah.
It's in the post, apparently.
It's always nice to get something out of it, definitely.
So, Nicky, just going back to your career then as a police officer, how have you seen things change in the environment? Certainly with the youngsters, and I know there's obviously a knife crime and things like that are big topics at the moment. I'd be interested to know what your thoughts on it and what you've seen and how you've observed changes over that period.
Yeah, I think generally there just seems to be less respect now for us as police officers, but generally in society. And it's worrying when you hear about kids who are taking knives to school, and even in relatively safe places like Daventry, where we all spent our childhood.
Of course.
It's quite frightening, really, to think that these kids are wandering around with things like that, and there's definitely just more of a lack of respect from people, which is why I think that Taekwondo is still a fantastic thing for kids to do, because it teaches you that respect, doesn't it? You see these kids who are bowing to their instructor, who are bowing to their fellow students, and so it gives me a bit of hope. When I've had a bad day at work and people have done whatever they've done, you can go to Taekwondo and think, oh, actually, there's still some hope around here. There are still people with manners, with respect, and that can follow general instructions.
So you mentioned that you've recently retired from competitive Taekwondo. What other sports do you participate or follow now then?
Me and Bill are still running our sparring side of the club, so we're still sparring we've got every week for that, so that's nice. So I'm still doing tag teams at the competitions as well, but I kind of decided that I wanted to do something a bit different. So I think it was probably about 4 years ago I decided that I wanted to have a go at triathlon. So I sort of fluffed my way into that, and I'm still doing that now. I've done a couple of half Ironman distances over the last couple of years, so
looks
just
like
to prove to myself really that I can do it, and not on a competitive level, because obviously I'm really nowhere near that level in triathlon, but just as something different to do, where I can still keep pushing myself and giving myself goals.
Absolutely, it's having those goals, isn't it? Having those goals to aim for. You've still got. You can't just sit around, especially when you're used to being in a competitive sport. It's not like you just retire and go, I'm going to sit and watch EastEnders now. Well, you might do, Nicky. I don't know, but I'd imagine.
The Bill.
The Bill. Sorry, sit and watch past episodes of the Bill and say, I
might do that.
I want to be like that. But certainly, I'd imagine.
I think when you spend so many years competing and doing exercise, and I'm not competing like I did, but that doesn't mean to say that I don't still have that desire to do something else and do keep doing something active, because I think it's just in our DNA, isn't it? That we might not be competing top level anymore, but we're still doing other stuff, and I don't think we're ever going to be people that are going to just sit and veg. That's for sure.
So one question we ask a lot of our guests, Nicky, is what motivates you? But really, what I want to know for yourself, what motivated you originally when you started Taekwondo, and then secondly, once you came back after giving birth to your daughter, what motivated you then?
Initially, the motivation was just that I enjoyed it, and as I said to you earlier, just watching you guys and what you were doing, and and seeing people sparring and doing the more exciting stuff, in my opinion, that motivated me to carry on. And then, just getting involved in the competition side of it, I started enjoying that more and more. When I was at university, I was kind of not being able to compete and commit so much to it, and then got back into it. Then I had my daughter, and I think it made me realise, after having that time off, having her, that I missed it so much, and it gave me a sort of renewed enthusiasm for it. So got back into training. Luckily, I've got Bill who can coach me, and we'd got the club there, so everything was available to me. I was lucky in that sense that we'd take Amelia along to the club, in a car seat, and she'd go in the corner with one of the parents and generally sleep through the session. So we were lucky in that sense that I had all the things around me to make it easier for me. But the enthusiasm was definitely there to just get back into it and enjoy it still, and get back into the sparring side of things, which I had missed while obviously I was pregnant.
Sure.
Good.
And what challenge did you have? Did you have any challenges when you came back from having your first daughter?
No, I mean, obviously you've got to build your fitness back up again, and you just got to be a little bit careful, because initially your body's been through a lot. But I think it was just a case of gradually getting back into it and not pushing myself too much, not having too many expectations about what I could achieve. I mean, I certainly didn't come back to training and think, right, next year I'm going to win the world champs, because that wasn't on my mind at all. It was literally a case of, right, I can't wait to get back. I'm just going to see what I can do, but I'm going to have fun and I'm going to enjoy myself, and it went from there, really.
Here's a question for you then, Nicky. If you could give the younger you a bit of advice, knowing what you know now and looking back over your career, what would it be?
I think just do what makes you happy. Enjoy what you're doing, and keep plugging away at it. You might not necessarily be the best straight away. You might not, didn't win anything for ages, but I just enjoyed going to competitions, and I had fun about what I was doing. So back then I never ever expected that it would lead to where it has done. It was just that I really enjoyed doing what I was doing, so I carried on. So I think that's the main piece of advice I'd probably give. If you enjoy it, then do it.
No, absolutely. And it's funny because we've interviewed quite a few people now with the podcast, and a lot of the top fighters, and then obviously we had Warren on there, we had you and Gordon, and nearly all of them are coming back with the same sort of advice. You've got to have fun, and you've got to enjoy what you're doing, because if you're not enjoying it, there's no point in doing it. You've got to want to do it for yourself. If you have fun and you enjoy it, then all the other opportunities come, don't they? The opportunities to open your own club or to fight internationally. Again, all these sort of things will come, but ultimately you've got to be enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Don't kind of think to yourself, well, have goals, of course. Think to yourself, one day it would be great if I was world champ or something, but don't stress about that. If you're enjoying it, then brilliant, and if you're not enjoying it so much, well, maybe do a different side of Taekwondo. If go and open up a school, or go into the teaching side of it a bit more, or focus on the patterns a bit more. You don't have to enjoy every single aspect of it, but if it's fun, then that's the main part of it for me.
Yeah, one of the golden threads, I'm certainly picking up from everyone that we have interviewed, is success isn't instantaneous. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes effort over 3 or 4 years in most cases, even for the likes of Warren and Gordon, and even yourself. So I think the message out there to anyone that is aspiring to get into the squad, they have to put the groundwork in first.
Definitely. I mean, I'm not naturally the most flexible of people. I never have been and never will be. I wasn't ever naturally talented, I don't think. It's just been a case of, if you'd seen me, well, you did see me try and kick when I was 10 years old.
Oh, yes, we did. Unfortunately, they didn't have video cameras then.
Yeah, I've got plenty of photographs, Nicky.
I won't say too much about how you were when you came back from the army, Jackson.
No, we don't want to mention that.
But no, I mean, you're not going to get success straight away. You see it so many times that there are people that aren't naturally talented, but they've worked so hard and they've got there. And on the flip side of that, you see people that have got so much skill, and you think, oh God, you could do amazingly well, and yet they don't put the hard work in, so they don't get there. And so I think it just shows if you plug away, obviously one of the tenets is perseverance. Keep going, and like I said before, if you're enjoying it, then brilliant, even better, because that's going to get you somewhere.
Of course, and I think sometimes the enjoyability factor of martial arts, again, it's not an instant thing, is it? Like I say, as Jackie said before, and I know you teach children in your class, and sometimes you get the children in, and 1 minute, they're hating it, and the parents are, oh, they're not enjoying it anymore, but all of a sudden they'll learn to do a new kick, or they'll pass a grading, and all of a sudden they love it, don't they? And it's like, oh yeah, I love this again, and it changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Something suddenly clicks with them, and it might be that
the awakening.
They're growing up, and physically they're getting stronger, and suddenly they can do something, or you teach them a new kick, like you say, and they think, oh yeah, that's a really good one, and it works for them, and then it renews their enthusiasm, and that's what we like about the teaching side of things as well, especially with sparring. You can teach them techniques, and you know that they probably won't use 80% of what you've told them, but there might be just one or two techniques that really suit them, and then they're off, and they've found their little niche and what they can do really well.
That's it. Well, you don't need to know every move, do you? Just a handful of little things in your arsenal that you can use well. Jackie always liked kicking on the knee. That was always his favourite.
He still does, doesn't he?
When there was, I can hear Jackson Senior kick the kicks above the waist in the background.
I'm going to remind him about one of my ridge hands as well in a minute, Nicky. Don't worry.
Between us, haven't we?
Brilliant. Well, listen.
Okay, one last question then, Nicky. Out of everyone that we've interviewed on the podcast, who would you like to see us, or who would you like to hear on an interview with us next?
I would like to hear Bob Howe, because Bob was Dave Oliver's instructor. Bob was the head of the UKTA, which was, sort of the precursor to where we are now. And when you speak to him as a person, he's just so. He's such a lovely guy to speak to.
He's so humble, isn't he?
He's not big-headed in any way whatsoever. But then, when you hear people like Dave talking about what he's done over the years, he's done really well. And actually, I remember we were at Friday night sparring once, and he took the session because Dave wasn't there. And I'd only ever known Bob as being someone that could do a reverse punch really hard on you, and because I felt that a few times, but never really heard him take a session. And when he took that session, he was absolutely brutal. He was just like a different person. So I think it'd be really interesting to listen to what he has to say about. That's
good. It sort of wraps it up, really, Nicky. So just want to say thank you very much for coming on today. It's been great to talk to you again. It's been a while since I've had a chat with you as well. It's great to do it on live recording. So thanks very much for coming in.
No problem. It was nice to have a chat with you too, and get the banter going again. And try and take the mick out of Jackson a little bit, given that he tries to take the mick out of us.
Well, listen, Nicky, every episode he does it to me, so I need to try to get my own back. Brilliant. Thanks.
Okay, Nicky.
We'll leave that there then.
Thanks,
we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem.
Take care, Nicky. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and our Facebook group, The Motivated Martial Artist Podcast.
Or check us out on Instagram, The Motivated Martial Artists,
where you'll see much more content and early insight into some of the interviews and some of the guests and some of the conversations around the things that we're discussing. Hope to see you all next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.